Hello, class. My name is Lisa Blauvelt, and this is my initial post for Historical Professions Week 6 on historical newspapers. This week, we were tasked with looking at the ProQuest Historical Newspapers database, which was very helpful and had a large collection of primary sources. I found that for my particular research, which is women's suffrage in New Jersey and New Jersey's role, I ended up focusing on the New York Times, being that it was the closest in proximity, but also one of the larger newspapers. In the past, I did use a smaller newspaper that was in New Jersey. It was known as the Perth Amboy, and it focused on the women's suffrage movement on a national standpoint, but also a local standpoint. Being that New Jersey is in the middle of New York, which was the headquarters for the National Women's Suffrage Association, and also Philadelphia, which was a large collection of suffragists. And also, Washington, D.C. is not very far. So that's why, being that I'm from New Jersey, I have focused on New Jersey's contributions. It's kind of like an in between, and people had to stop off in New Jersey. Elizabeth Cady Stanton actually had a house in New Jersey that many people stopped at. It was right off of the railroad. And while they were on their way from the headquarters in New York to Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., they would stop at her house and they would reconvene about the importance of what they would be discussing. But in focusing on these New York Times documents, they ranged from 1860 to 1915. And the 19th century documents really focus on celebrating the anniversary of the women's suffrage movement, the anniversary of the Seneca Falls Convention, subsequent conventions that occurred. But once we hit the turn of the century, these articles started focusing on the current fight for women's suffrage, events that were occurring, conventions that were occurring, votes that were occurring for a federal and state legislation for women's rights. Using newspapers has been incredibly helpful for my research, and I think that it's probably one of the most important resources for primary sources because it is also a form of what the area might be feeling about women's suffrage. Being that New York is a little bit more liberal in this area, you can see that maybe it was a little bit more open. Now, if I were to look at a different newspaper, by comparison, it might not show such support for women's suffrage. They might not even report on women's suffrage. So that might be something that I plan to look forward to. I hope you all enjoyed my initial post. I look forward to seeing what you all have to say for this week. Thank you.